Welcome to Plain Talk. In the second part of the show, Chad and I are going to talk about a very interesting committee hearing the Senate Finance and Tax Committee just had about property taxes, which has left me completely flummoxed as to what we've been doing in the past several weeks on property taxes, because it kind of seems like the committee, and I say this, they received an amendment. They have not acted on the amendment. They've adjourned now until their afternoon session, so we're recording this in between. It sure says, first of all, they're moving the credit up. They moved it down. The original credit for Governor Armstrong and Representative Mike Napie's bill was at $1,550. The Senate moved it down. The House moved it to $1,450. Senate moved it to $1,250. Now the Senate's putting it back up to $1,650, and they might get rid of a 75% cap on the amount that credit can replace of your property tax bill. Both of those things were initiatives of Senate Majority Leader David Hogue, and now it kind of seems like we're going backwards. And why didn't they just pass the original bill? Like, what do we do anyway? We're going to talk about that.
I cannot wait to talk about this in the second half because I did not watch the hearing, so I can't wait to hear why we don't already have a bill signed.
Yeah,
if this is the process.
It was something. And the thing is, they're moving in my direction, so I don't want to. Right. I don't want like I'm complaining. This is the direction I wanted to head in, but. Right. I'm a little flummoxed as to why we took this route to get there. But the legislature's going to legislate, yeah. And nobody knows more about the well, now I shouldn't say nobody. Somebody who knows a lot about the tomfoolery that our lawmakers get up to is Brent Sanford, who used to preside over the North Dakota Senate as lieutenant governor. You know, he was once upon a time Watford City Council, mayor of Watford City, which is a beautiful community. Then he became a lieutenant governor. Then he left the lieutenant governorship. He's done all sorts of stuff. He's and climbing the ladder quickly in the university system. Became president of Bismarck State College. Now chosen to be the chancellor of the North Dakota University System. Brent, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Rob and Chad. I'm excited to talk about it.
It looks like you're still in your Bismarck State office, though.
I am.
When do you get to move? When do you get to move to the big office, the chancellor's office?
2 weeks. So we've got 2 weeks to try to figure out this calendar of what do we want to do in the last 2 weeks. And I have to tell you, it's a lot sooner if there was going to be a time to be out of this position than any of us expected. I mean, I had a 12-month contract, and it's been a blur for 3 months with starting when I began, they already had started session. So here I am with picking up a appropriations bill. I had been consulting with Bismarck State for a year and you know, blissfully not having to worry about this kind of stuff. And then start once session has already happened after the first week and go through session following that approps bill. They're trying to kick that out at the same time as the chancellor resigns and the board meets and names me as interim chancellor. So yeah, for our Bismarck State calendar, it's a little quick. It's soon. We've got a month to go before graduation. But you know, from system wide, I mean, I work for the board and that's the direction they want to go. And I'm willing and I'm able. And I got to admit, I'm super excited about a statewide focus again. So I'm ready to go.
So Brent, you won't be, so they'll name another interim president at BSC. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Larry Scogan do both gigs at one point, both the interim chancellor and the BSC president? Or did he give up the BSC president when he was interim chancellor?
My understanding is they named an interim president here. I believe it was Dave Clark, who was executive VP. And they have named at the same time, I don't know if they ended up getting it in the press release at the same time, but Dan Leingang, our vice president of Dr. Leingang will be the interim president. He's vice president of academic affairs. He's been here for 25 years. I mean, Dan is beloved on campus. And so he'll function as, he's also signing a 1-year contract to function as interim president of BSC. And he is very interested in permanent presidency of BSC. And so it's a quick move all around. And then we had to shuffle up another one of our deans into Dan's position. So Alicia Udy will be interim vice president of academic affairs. So it's just opportunity abounding in higher ed these days.
You know, chancellor of the university system is one of those positions that whenever we make a new hire, and speaking as somebody who's been a pain in the ass for multiple university system chancellors now, I always wonder, why would anyone want that job? Like it's difficult now, and I say that like I'm joking, but I'm kind of not, because the way I look at it, like the universities all have constituencies, right? They have communities that really love their institutions. They have business leaders who, obviously have various interests in having those campuses in their communities. You have the sports fan bases, which are maybe particularly important in the East. The chancellor doesn't have a constituency. And
Right.
I think that in some ways can make it very difficult, especially when you're making decisions that might prove unpopular with some of the campuses. It's a really thankless job. And I mean, I wonder if I could give truth serum to some of our past chancellors about whether they ever should have taken the job in the first place. It's a pretty tough one. I guess speak to that because there's a lot there to navigate.
Yeah. Good question. That's probably the most common question. And I've had people who have known me a long time. One of them I worked with at Ide Bailey, known him my entire professional career, said, "You've proven that you like dysfunction and you like to jump into that." Oh, okay. Thank you, but whatever. Another one, you don't mind chaos, but the ones that I feel really good about are notes from people saying, I enjoy seeing someone from outside of higher ed that has a perspective, a statewide perspective, that has private business perspective, that has elected official perspective. Maybe this is what we need, and that's more where I'm coming from. Is I hope it's not that I'm some kind of junkie for chaos, for goodness sakes. But there's a lot in in higher ed in general, especially with what's happening at the federal level. I mean, there's a lot of people that say, "Why in the world would you want to go this direction?" And to give a little bit of a sidebar, I told you before, this wasn't really where I was intending after resigning from lieutenant governor. I was thinking more private sector without specific plans, but thinking energy and such, and end up working in energy. But they're asking me what to help with government. Okay, we know you know how to work and navigate through government, being in it for so long, since 2006, right? And so, and then getting an opportunity, I was asked by Kevin Black, who's on the board, and by President Jensen, please serve on Envision 2035 energy breakout for the higher ed project for what does energy look like for the year 2035. And I hesitated, but I agreed. And so that was the kickstart to consulting agreement to help with workforce and economic development, grand energy, all these different ideas that Bismarck State had to deploy to where the jobs need to be filled, and how does higher ed deploy in exactly the way that the workforce situation demands and that those employers are looking for. And so it was fascinating, right? But it's where, so to me, it was government and employers and past experience with having to navigate between them. And it ends up being a good fit. And so I feel good about it. I mean, it's something where this is a place where we can truly try to gain some focus on being that workforce solution for the state. And that's not the type of words that you generally hear out of higher ed, right? You hear those words out of commerce and out of governors and out of legislatures. And I know the language that these other folks speak. So the people in higher ed say, yeah, you know, that side that ends up being intimidating and adversarial against higher ed is the elected official side, right? And so I hope to be able to bridge the gap. I hope that my former colleagues see this as an opportunity of, okay, we have someone that can bridge the gap, that understands all sides. And so what a stroke of luck to be able to have been an interim president for 3 months and to go through the chaos of the growth at Bismarck State and a legislative session and get to know how it works with the cadence of all the different titles, all the levels of accreditation, and the different boxes you have to check for that. I've had meetings with faculty senate like crazy because there was a post-tenure review bill that was put in place that was the most controversial bill for faculty around the state. And so I've had a lot of meetings with faculty senate. We're trying to work through the wounds from what was happening, what the distrust that they feel from the words that are coming out from the federal level, from legislative level. And, so it's been quite a learning experience in 3 months. And now I have that experience going into the chancellor's office. I wouldn't have had that before. And frankly, not a lot of people that end up in those administrative positions have had that position. So it's turning out where I feel pretty good about the background and coming into it and the viewpoint going forward. There's a system office that has a lot of staff, a lot of positions. We need to look at, evaluate all of them. How do we help the campuses? How does the chancellor help the presidents? I mean, I'm telling Dan Line Gang, I will be there for you in this position. I will be your boss, just as I have been the last 3 months. We will be tackling this together, and I'll also be able to have those relationships with other presidents from the other universities and colleges. So I'm really excited about it.
So, Rob sort of stole my question of why in the world would anybody want this job, but I'm going to pivot slightly. I think it is an interesting time to be coming into this chancellor. I think the board of higher ed is pretty good right now. I think Levi Bachmar is going to be a really great addition to that board of higher ed. But I think one of the things that's really difficult about this position is you talk about BSCs exploding. You talk about UND and NDSU being these incredible research universities, but then you also have Botno, right? And you also have Valley City State and Mayville State. How do you balance all the needs of those universities and the need? I mean, you brought up the needs of the faculty at BSC and spending time in the relationships. The faculty and staff at these universities are very different between Botno College and NDSU. So, I mean, it's a lot of different folks looking at things from very different lenses. How do you balance all of those different perspectives?
Well, and so, yeah, just to have that experience at Bismarck State, it's very valuable. And then you take that to a macro concept of this with NDSU and UND. It's not going to be easy. And the good thing is I don't have to recreate the wheel because we have very competent presidents. We have a really good group of presidents. They all have their own challenges. And the challenges that I've been involved with for the last year and a half have been, okay, try to map the workforce needs with what's being provided from the public higher ed system. And so we have challenges at Dickinson State. We have a new president. We have declining enrollment over a number of years period of time. All of us came up a bit this year, which is really great. When we're not having that enrollment cliff from other states because our population is situated a bit differently because of the influx during the boom, right? So we have opportunities where we should all be growing. Some could be growing a little faster. So what is that? Is it a business model issue? Is it a leadership issue? Is it a resource allocation issue? And get in there and visit with these presidents about what can we do to help our local workforce needs with the programs we have and the programs we should develop. But first things first, we have a new president in Dickinson State. So Scott Mollinger will need some help from the chancellor's position. I can tell you personally, there's going to be the reason for me to be able to spend more time with him than others at certain points. We have a position to fill in Devil's Lake immediately. It'll be within 2 months of me taking the job. We'll have Doug Darling's retirement. So putting those new presidents in position with support and then trying to get a handle on their own institutions of what I encountered at Bismarck State was a really solid team, really solid middle level of authority, and then great faculty, not a lot of turnover. It's something where we'd gotten to a really efficient point through my predecessor. So it's more of a growth challenge point now of what do we do as we're growing back into these programs and into the new programs. It might be different at some of our other institutions. You mentioned Botno. I mean, some of these colleges that are in smaller communities wouldn't have the blessing you do in Bismarck, where you have a 120,000 person community around you asking for more and more and more and more. How can you help the healthcare facility with the nursing needs that we have? We have opportunities like that. Are those opportunities the same in smaller communities? They might not be. So our system is broad, diverse, a lot of differences in between them. I go back to the early days of our Burgum administration, and the governor really wanted to have a tiered approach to it because he said these three different groups of institutions are so different.
Brent, I wanted to ask you about something you talked a little bit about. You've referenced a couple times now things that are happening at the federal level. We saw some of that. One of the things is a very aggressive regime regarding immigration. And we saw that touch recently at North Dakota State University, where I guess it was a student who, I guess I don't know specifically what the status, but the student was here legally, participating in a program that allowed them to pursue education through work. They were doing that at the university, and the university got notice that person's being deported. I know that personally you're passionate about this. After you left government as lieutenant governor, you worked for the North Dakota Petroleum Council on immigrant recruitment, bringing specifically people maybe over from Ukraine,
Yep.
people who already had, experience in the energy. We did an interview about this, bringing them over into North Dakota to fill some of our chronic labor shortage here. When I look at what's happening, I mean, I think North Dakota's universities, all of them, have a significant number of foreign students who are here on various visas or programs. They're here legally, but they're not citizens. We have researchers, we have faculty who are here in that same way. How are you going to navigate that? Because it's not just, that maybe some of these people are going to be acted upon by the federal government, but also the message that the federal government may be sending to future waves of potential students or researchers or faculty who might be considering coming to a place like North Dakota to work or to get an education. I mean, if we lose some of that, you're talking about enrollment problems. That could potentially be a significant blow to enrollment. So, I mean, you're kind of walking into a pretty tough situation. Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, we have a really competent vice president of student affairs here, Kaylin Bondi, who has a plan for if ICE shows up on Bismarck State campus, and we have some students that are international students, and I can tell you, my new niece-in-law is from Canada, and they got married during college, and she hasn't been a resident very long or a citizen very long, and Canadians are even nervous about this. I was just talking to a gentleman at breakfast that said down in Arizona, the snowbirds that are Canadians are selling their house. They're not only offended, but they're scared about this. And so I hope we get this under control and return to an environment where we're respecting legal immigration. And the programs you mentioned, Rob, are all legal immigration programs. The one that I was working with the Petroleum Council, humanitarian parole, is in some cases they refer to it as actually not legal immigration. It's actually a stopgap for people where there's war in your country. And so humanitarian parole is you bypass a lot of the normal process. You're actually given the ability to work immediately when you enter the country, and the countries have to be qualifying for humanitarian parole. Ukraine qualified for their citizens could qualify for humanitarian parole because there's a war happening in their country. So humanitarian parole is very much under question today. A lot of those workers, it sounds like to me, a lot of those workers that are desiring full-time work status have gone towards green cards and visas, et cetera, and legal immigration. So the employers that I was working with 2 years ago said, "Oh, we're sponsoring our employees that want to stay here long term, and it's going to be okay." So that's assuring, but the point is, with what's happening recently, there's a lot of fear out there. I don't know if it's just from the press. It seems like there's some reality to it, that even if you have a legal visa, there might be some concern. But there's no doubt if we have a protocol here at Bismarck State and have been addressing it, I'll know for sure in May. But I'm assuming that there's a more robust programs at NDSU, UND, the larger universities.
So shifting gears just a little bit, I just thought of this while we were sitting here and talking about the universities and the colleges that are in rural communities. I know this isn't under your purview, but we also have our tribal colleges, which are really great, often partners. And I'm just wondering, does NDUS partner with tribal colleges? Because when you talk about workforce, I visited the tribal college up in Belcourt recently, and they've got a great education program where it's sort of, grow your own, keeping teachers right there. Does NDUS partner with the tribal communities and share resources? And obviously the federal cuts are really concerning to the tribal colleges, but can you talk about that relationship a little bit?
Yes, we actually do. And my first meeting in January as president at the higher ed board level, Dr. Twyla Baker from Newtown was from community college up there, was from MHA, was talking about their challenges. They've got enrollment growth. They're looking to do maybe a little bit more CTE. So we've been trying to get together. Ironically, we got together the day that I had to leave the meeting because I was being asked to fill this chancellor position. But great future Vice President of Academic Affairs, Alicia Udy, helped continue the meeting, and our rodeo coach, John Peak, John Peak is like all over this because he's got rodeo athletes from MHA. And so we're looking at partnering on equine studies, and that ends up being where it might feed into a behavioral health. It might feed into a counseling. I mean, it's happening at the Healing Horse facility up there by Partial. And so there's interesting partnerships that can be done and are happening between the tribal colleges. One of the good things that we worked on with Jim Davis, Scott Davis's dad, when he was at Turtle Mountain, was bringing a state scholarship in for the non-enrolled students at the tribal colleges, because if you live in those areas surrounding the reservations or within the boundaries and you're not enrolled, then you'd have to pay full boat, whereas the enrolled members get assistance from the federal government. So the state system has been cooperating, and we try to do more and more with recognizing credits and going back and forth.
What do you think the biggest challenge for the university system? And I agree with Chad. I mean, I think we've got, after some chaos in the past, I feel like we've had a good board. I feel like things have been pretty steady for a while. I feel like we've got some pretty good presidents at the big campuses in particular. I'm not throwing shade at the presidents of the smaller. I think we're doing pretty good overall. Like I think we've
Yeah.
got a pretty good place. But from the perspective that things can always improve, what are the challenges as you're looking forward to doing this job for, I'm assuming long term, the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years and beyond.
Yeah, I'm very open to permanency in this position. I can say that pretty comfortably, even though I haven't even started 2 weeks from now. But I'm looking forward to being able to put time into this, of, first of all, accountability and transparency, and that's something that those words aren't just hollow. I mean, that is what the legislature is looking for. If you look at the hearings so far on our appropriation bill, on the policy bills, they really want transparency and accountability. And I think we can bring that. We do have a really good set of presidents. We have a really good staff in the system office. We have good upper level staff that I've been able to engage with from the other institutions. Okay. But then next after that is, okay, what do we do? We take our operations where we're good at educating students, but then how do we play ball in that research phase, that startup and innovation phase? And then how do we make sure that we're responding to the workforce needs? Because for some reason, that isn't always the main metric of, okay, do our graduates, me as a business person, I've always thought it should be, do our graduates get jobs here where people need to hire them? Well, it wasn't so long ago when I was coming out of college, there were no jobs. My dad said, you're going to go get a college degree and you probably move to Minneapolis or Denver and work for a corporation. I'll see you on the holidays, because there's no jobs in North Dakota. That's not the case today. We are actually not building up our own high school grads into the point of where it's addressing our workforce needs. So we've got a lot of work to do. We've gotten better at communicating with counselors, teachers, not just the administrators, but counselors and teachers, and try to get better at communicating with parents of what job opportunities there are for our own kids, because employers by and large say, where am I going to get the employees if I come and invest here? There's not enough people. So we need to be part of that solution. We need to be better in that solution.
Well, I think that's important, especially given that we market, the expense of higher ed. These kids, these families have to incur debt a lot of times in order to afford to go. It's a significant investment, and we justify that by saying, well, on the other end, you're going to get good jobs, and so that needs to be true. But how do you balance that? Years ago, I was invited to be on a panel at Minot State University, and it was a debate about whether how important humanities were, like the tension between like a very workforce minded education versus some of the more traditional, maybe classical education, music and art and some of these other things. And I think they were expecting me to come in, right? I was the ogre, right? I was kind of the Philistine at the gate that they were bringing in, higher ed people going to bring in, and thought that I was going to be like, yeah, just teach them how to do jobs and nothing else. And I wasn't. In fact, I think the universities make a mistake when they set it up as a choice between like teaching people how to weld or teaching people about Shakespeare. We should be talking about how important it is for welders to know about Shakespeare and vice versa.
Rob, can I add to that before Brent answers? I mean, listening to the workforce, I was thinking the same thing Rob does. My liberal arts friends are listening and thinking that's not the point of universities, just to create a workforce. It's to create good citizens who can think and all that kind of stuff. So can you, like, what would you say to that when folks are hearing, workforce, and there's that tension?
I feel like I can help bridge the gap between, because the politicians, the elected officials, the employers, the press, I mean, we're talking about the need for trained employees, workforce, opportunities for kids, students, and then, but what our university system does is, yes, you learn when you go there. I came out of there as a graduate of UND, and my dad asked me, "What'd you learn?" I said, "How much I don't know." I mean, it just broadens your mind incredibly, and it's wonderful. But then he also said, "What is your business degree going to be in? You need to have a trade within that. You better pick accounting or finances." Okay, I'll do accounting, but I mean, it should be both. It should. And I want to tell you that it's been a very robust discussion about 90-degree bachelor degrees. One of Representative Maschbacher's bills was on that, to allow that. And his intention was to strip out everything but the major courses only. And I can tell you, the employers say, wait a minute, we want our welders to have a couple business classes. We want our welders to be able to actually be able to write a memo. We need communications. We need to be able to have them give a presentation. So I mean, the soft skills are desired. Bismarck State on a 2-year degree, technical degree, you're still required of 15 credits of non technical, right? And then on a bachelor, it's 36. We have a model for a computer information system cyber 90 credit bachelor that still has 36 credits of general. So you can still get your communications, your English, your history, your social science. You can still have those courses, which the employers don't want to scrub that part. They want to have all of it.
Well, I want my welder to know how to weld, but I also want him to be able to have a conversation with people and bill in a timely manner, right? I mean, there's a lot of skills.
We have to remember that human beings are not widgets, and we shouldn't be training people to just plug into a particular job. Maybe somebody doesn't want to be a welder their whole life. Maybe physically they can't be a welder their whole that could be a physically demanding job. And maybe there comes a point in their life where they want to move up the ladder and do something less demanding, and they need to have the skills to be able to do that, and being able to teach communication and some of these other things. It's got to be broader. And I think sometimes we're I mean, I believe me, I understand the imperative for workforce, everything else. I just, and it's reality. Kids have to get value out of these degrees, or not just kids, anybody who gets these degrees for what they pay for them. They have to get value out of them. There's no question about it. But they're going to get more value long term with the other part. Anyway, I'm on my soapbox now about the humanities and a well-rounded education. I just think it's important. A couple minutes left, Brent. What you take office in May? What's your first initiative? What do you want to get started on first?
So first of all, get a handle on the office and how the structure works there, and then it's going to be with the presidents. So my main job is obviously reporting to the board, but I'm pretty fluent with the board the way it is. I mean, I've got relationships with board members, but make sure that you're meeting expectations there. But then it's the presidents, and then the system office itself, and doing a lot like I did with this. It's a listening tour. I know there's suggestion and insisting basically from the governor and from legislative leadership that you need to do some listening tours as higher ed, and I love those. Rob, that I like just having interviews where it's just unscripted and just ask me questions. I love it, so I look forward to that, with going all around the state to the different communities, the institutions, and meeting with stakeholders and just, hey, what's on your mind? What can we do better? This is what we're trying to do, and just start going from there. And the work tasks come as you're asking those questions, and then you fill those in, find out who on your team can accomplish what, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Brent, one last question. Did you plan your start date for about the same time the legislature left town? Was that a purposeful start date?
You'll have to ask the chancellor why he decided to resign on last Friday, because then it all kind of fell into where that was the reality.
Well, maybe he wanted to run through the finish line of the legislative session. Maybe, I don't know.
He must have wanted to break the tape, run through the line. Yeah.
Thanks, Brent.
Thanks, Brent.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Chad.